Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you on behalf of Cornerstone Institute and Oxford University Press. My name is Tulani Dube. I have been given the pleasure or the honor of moderating this panel discussion tonight. I'd like to think of myself at the present moment as the rose among the thorns. No, the other way around, the thorn among the roses. So yeah. And also we are on social media. So you will find us at all our Cornerstone platforms, Twitter, Facebook Live. So we are streaming this. Should you want to tweet or comment on anything, the hashtag is CI Literacy Dialogue. That being said, I would like to, maybe before I introduce the panelists, just acknowledge Oxford University Press for partnering with Cornerstone on this. And this is specifically for looking at the challenges South Africa has faced in terms of literacy at early childhood stages. So I will introduce the panelists and we will take it from there. So we're going to try to have this like a discussion in the living room. The only downside is you're taking the heavy questions from, so yeah. I feel like if I sit, can I sit? I'm good, cool, thank you. Feels a lot more comfortable. So I would like to introduce Ms. Portia October first, who's a seasoned educator. She's been a registered counselor with 28 years of teaching experience from primary to high school. She's played key roles in literacy projects with organizations like READ Educational Trust and New Leaders Foundation. She is currently Funda Wande's literacy specialist, and she leads interventions in the Western Cape, working closely with the Western Cape Education Department. She is passionate about impacting literacy in South Africa and committed to driving positive change. Ms. October? Yeah. Okay. So I'll just introduce everyone to bring them on so that we can start the discussion from this point. Then I have Dr. Xolisa Guzula, who is a senior lecturer at the University of Cape Town, specializing in multilingual education. She's a pioneer in founding reading clubs like Nalibali Reading Club and the Stars of Today's Literacy. She's an acclaimed author of children's books and a renowned translator. I have to note that her thesis, I actually was confused when you gave me your thesis. I think the first part is written in isiXhosa, and I was struggling. I was like, "Yo, Nkosi yami." So, where was I? She actively promotes social justice in language education through initiatives like Boa Lit, and serves as vice chair of Liter SA in the Western Cape. She focuses on multilingual literacy and strives towards shaping and reshaping education to empower communities in South Africa and beyond. Ma'am? Mrs. Natalie Southgate. Everyone seems to be here for you, Natalie, apparently. Like everyone was saying, oh, we hear Natalie's here. So we have a superstar in our midst. Natalie Southgate is the Foundation Phase Deputy Chief Education Specialist for English in the Western Cape Education Department. She has an B.Ed Honours degree in Foundational Curriculum Studies, extensive teaching experience across diverse school settings, and her role as curriculum advisor highlights the commitment of shaping educational experience. She is passionate about literacy for every learner and hopes this will enrich our discussion today. Ma'am. Dr. Frances Wessels is one of our very own Cornerstone Institute. She holds a PhD in philosophy of education. She's currently in the School of Education at Cornerstone Institute. So she received her PhD from UNISA and has a diverse background in teaching and in education. So she has focused her focus areas from teaching grade 1 to 12 to conducting pioneering research at the Western Cape Education Department. She's made significant contributions both at Cornerstone and to the field. She's currently lecturing PGCE foundation phase and spearheads international collaboration efforts through COIL, C-O-I-L. You need to enlighten us on what that is. She's also an author and has co-authored textbooks as well as academic publications. She says she has come full circle in the academic arena and strives to continue to reshape education and literacy with her expertise and dedication. Thank you. I feel like I've been on the mic for way too long, so I think just to set the tone, I will maybe just give these a few stats that were indicated by the Progress of International Reading Literacy Study, the PEARLS, that states that it revealed that 82% of grade 4 children in South Africa are unable to comprehend written material in any language, and this is in 2021. And similarly, in 2011, those stats were at 78%. So there isn't much improvement, more of a decline rather. And it also states that the COVID has played a bigger part in kind of exacerbating that situation. Maybe to kind of kick us off, Francis, just give us a brief take on your understanding of the PEARLS, that study.
Okay, I think if we look at the stats, then it is a very sad state of affairs. We really, all of us have a very, very profound duty to, I think, support those teachers, but also the pre-service teachers, because they are going to be the future teachers of the learners, and I'm very concerned about the learners affected. The first 4 years of learners' journey in education, laying the foundation for reading. And with that we mean not only decoding words and recognition of words, but really meaning, reading for meaning. That is very, very crucial. Foundation phase learners must understand that written words are permanent symbols for spoken words, and that those words will eventually become sentences which they will understand. But in order to do that, we need to have teachers that are really fully equipped to prepare those learners. And I think if we think about our stats and we think about the South African education system, we are very concerned with the matrics and the matric results. But I would say that we must rather pay more attention to ECD and the foundation phase. According to Professor Ignatius Gous, and he is now a specialist in brain studies. He says the first 1,000 days of a child's life, that is very important for the formation of mother tongue. That means parents have an important duty Parents must read to their children. If a child observes a parent reading, then there's already a seed that is sown. And if a parent reads a story to a child, the foundation for reading is really laid. You can see I am very concerned about the ECD and the small child, because if we think about our matrics and advanced learning studies students, then I think we must really, really pay much more attention to our ECDs. Yeah, a child who can understand what they read, that child is really on his or her way for advanced learning, because if they understand reading, then they can see the difference between real life and they can think abstractly, which indicates that they are on their way for advanced learning. That means reading and studying further than the matric. A child who reads well often speaks confidently, and a child who learns to read it at his own pace, we know we must nurture that particular child. Reading is a personal and reading is a personal and the individual experiences where child makes meaning and learns more about the narrative works as they grow and they start getting more used to learning. Individual learners should be nurtured, especially when we have small group reading, small group teaching. There is where the individual teacher, where the teacher can speak to the individual child. And I must say, parents must read to their children. There must be books in homes. We must take them to libraries. You know, I did research on first additional language, and I actually went into people's homes and I did not find books. Many of those homes, there were no books, not even newspapers. So we really have all of us have a profound duty to prepare our learners for the future, because the future depends, I think the future depends on us at this point in time. Thank you.
Thanks, Francis. I was actually going to make a comment just after that in terms of having books in houses, but also considering the social dynamics that, economic dynamics that we have in the country. Yeah. That's something that maybe I'll bring to you, Dr. Kuzula, in a minute. But I just wanted to touch base with Portia in terms of, obviously, again, let's just start from the pearls and your work as in the NPO space and how that's linked to that.
So, hi everyone. I think Fundawande, like everyone that's sitting up here and most of you that's out there, has a passion to see that our children can read. And to look at the Pearls results, before Fundawande is very young. We only started in 2017. We started as a result of the Pearls results. When the president said, let's get reading right. Let's get our children reading. And so our founder, Dr. Nick Spall, was tasked with that to go and make sure that he gets together people that can sort of face this big giant and start biting it a little bit bite-sized. So we have a big, audacious goal. We call it a big, hairy, audacious goal, which is that every child must be able to read for meaning and calculate with confidence by 2030, by the age of 10. That's a big goal. But if we don't set ourselves a goal, we're never going to want to do something to reach it. So we were well on our way with our workbooks and then COVID hit. And then we just If you looked at the results, the 2021 results, it went from 78% of our children can't read for meaning to 81% of our children can't read and can't even understand the basic questions and be able to extract basic answers. So in the polls report, you'd see that there's a benchmark and then there's a lower benchmark, lower than the benchmark, which is like 400 points, I think. And we haven't even reached 400 points. I mean, the Afrikaans as a language has reached 300 and odd points, and English is 200, and then all our other languages follow after that. And our worst language in the polls report has been Sepedi. And so we have, one of our foci in Fundawande is one intervention in Limpopo because we want to get to the Sepedi speakers. And it's been amazing. I won't speak now fully on what we've done. But so as an NGO, I think you have more flexibility than the government. And you're able to maybe get things going a little bit faster. And we have been very blessed and honored to be able to have partners like Alan Gray and Michael Susan Dow Foundation and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that came and saw the need. So it's not about the money, it's about the passion, it's about setting that big, hairy, audacious goal and getting our children there. Because if they can't, if the benchmark is 500 points, and the lower than the benchmark is 400, and our children is not even reaching the 400 mark. That means they really cannot even extract things out of an article or out of a text. So for us as an NGO, that has been uppermost in our minds and we were well on our way after that first pulse or that first shocker of 78%. And then COVID hit. And I mean, we all know how children didn't go to school, how they had that alternating timetables, how they weren't even and especially our children in our Quinta 1 to 3 schools who didn't have data, who didn't have Wi-Fi, couldn't do anything. And then it went down even further. But I always think that if we just keep our goal in mind, we know where we are. And the whole world knows where we are. And we're the only country that have aggregated our results into languages. The only one country. So we're looking at all our languages and where are they sitting below that benchmark. And we need to make sure as NGO, as government, as universities, as we need to start partnering. We need to start collaborating so that we all can reach that goal. Thanks.
Thanks, Portia. Doc, I think you've done a lot of research on multilingual and multiliteracies in education. I'm intrigued by, again, starting off at Pearls, your take on where we are with languages, what your research really states. Are we in the right direction? I'm tempted to say, are the wheels still on?
Good evening, everybody. I'm happy to be here. First of all, I agree with the sentiments shared here by my two colleagues. We all want our best for our children, and we want them to be literate. And there are there are a lot of people who are meaning well in our society, who are doing their best to get our children reading and writing. And then you get the pearls that cites the statistic. And the statistic is meant to make us panic. The statistic is meant to get us worrying about literacy. And when we panic, sometimes we come up with solutions that are not so well thought through because we are in a panic to fix something, like perhaps to try and fix the symptoms and not go deeper to the real cause of the problem. So I belong to a group of activists, literacy activists, who call themselves Bua Lit. Bua as in speak out in Setswana. Bua Lit as in lit, and, or fire, or literacy. And language, and we're trying to bring social justice in education, and especially in language and literacy education. Now, the statistic has been there since 2006, 2011, 2016, 2020, 21. Yes. So and nothing has been improving, and but a lot of effort has been put in to try and fix the situation. But it does look like we are patching the symptoms and not going deeper into the problem. The problem that I want to talk about with regards to the statistic, first of all, is that yes, there is the statistic. We all agree that there are issues in education in general, and then there are issues in literacy education. We agree that we have challenges there. But there's something, I think, that when we look at it's like when looking at social media or when looking at the internet, you've got to be selective of what you believe in. But I'm not saying that there aren't literacy problems, but what we have to think critically about the Pearl statistic, because what it doesn't tell us about what the tests are capable what the tests are capable of doing. For example, when the children are tested and are tested on particular skills, the test actually narrows down what we consider as literacy. It narrows it down, for example, to technical skills or to comprehension skills. But there's more to literacy than just comprehension and the technical skills of decoding. It doesn't tell us that the children are able to tell a story after you've read a story to them. It doesn't tell us that the children are able to write their own stories. It doesn't tell us that the children are also able to draw stories, because there are many ways to be literate. And print literacy is one of the ways of being literate. It is not the only way of being literate. And that said, and these children have to write now in the languages, they write in their home languages. So one might ask, why are they failing, but they are learning in their languages? Now, what we understand is that in South Africa, training is done in English in the institutions of teaching and learning. And you train teachers who are going to teach African languages in English, and you expect them to be able now to translate that training into practice in the classroom. I'm just wondering what would happen if the English teachers in this room were to be trained in isiXhosa, to go to school to teach English after being trained in isiXhosa. So there is something that is wrong there, where our teacher educators are only English speaking. So when they teach the students literacy, they also bring their own English logic into the teaching of even phonological awareness. There isn't an African language logic that is brought in the teaching of literacy. For example, we know that in literacy you have to teach phonological awareness, like where children have to learn the sounds of the language and how to say the sounds and to blend them and to put them together into words. We know that, but it does work for English. But how is it that the logic of English is applied to African languages? So it's almost like we are importing literacy from even the United States, because, or England, and it comes as jolly phonics. That must be applied in context, across context, with no care for relatability of what is being taught to the children. So, for example, there's one aspect in teaching literacy that is ignored that works for African languages, which is called morphological awareness. There hasn't been any training of teachers to use morphological awareness to teach literacy in African languages. And morphological awareness brings, it brings meaning making from the beginning. Because we know with the teaching of phonics, what happens is that meaning making is delayed until the children can sound out the letters. Then they can't get to the meaning. So as you also know that there's a hierarchy of skills. You have to first do your phonics and letter sounds, then practice them and be fluent in them and say them accurately. And then you get to vocabulary, and then you get to comprehension. So what happens is that most teachers in foundation phase classroom are teaching the phonics the whole 3 years. They haven't arrived at meaning making with the children. So by the time they get to grade 4, you now expect them to be able to answer questions that require meaning making when there was no meaning making in the classroom. But with morphological awareness, you can make meaning immediately with the children when, for example, you talk about umtu. Umtu is a person, and there's a word, ntu. Ntu in the African language is the root word for umtu. And then when you start saying abantu, you means it's the plural. So the children know immediately that the suffixes can tell you that it's plural or it is singular. That's meaning making already, or abantwana, you know. So I think that the PELS then doesn't bring out those nuances about how to teach African languages, because the training becomes generic, and then teachers are expected to teach the African languages, and then we get surprised when they cannot produce children who can read for meaning when being taught to read also. To teach reading in a one-sided way. We believe in a holistic approach in teaching children literacy. Not one approach that values reading only, but the one that also values writing. Because children also learn to read from their own writing. When they write their messages, when they say, I love you, and they do their emergent literacies, and they scribble, but they can tell you what they are scribbling about. Then you write conventionally for them, and then they read the conventional writing. So the writing for younger children becomes the first skill that they engage with, more than reading. But somehow we turn things around because we believe that reading has to come first. But for me, it's not a problem if we can teach them simultaneously, reading and writing, because it is the writing that is required at the end for children to express themselves in assessments. If they can't express themselves in writing, then they fail the whole assessment. So we cannot divorce writing from reading, and those need to happen together. So what the PERS statistic then does is that it narrows down literacy to reading, and also narrows down reading to comprehension or to decoding sometimes. And so what happens is that now we see literacy as reading rather than see the full spectrum of being literate. That includes critical literacies, that includes multimodal literacies, which mean that children can communicate through art, they can communicate through performance, they can communicate through storytelling, which is a familiar literacy experience that they know from home that can be brought into school. Those are shut out of the literacy conversations, because when you do large-scale studies, you have to narrow down to the things that you can tick, 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 tick. But if children are writing in full, it's difficult to standardize that, because each child is expressing themselves differently. So I think we need to then stop and think, what are these assessments really testing?
Thank you, Doc. Interestingly, something that you mentioned about the solutions that we come up with, and I think you sit with a lot of those challenges, and I think the report for you, Natalie, has been a big punch. What's your take on it? And also just looking at maybe just a hint of, have there been any solutions that you think have been implemented prematurely as a baseline?
Good evening, colleagues. I think the first question we should ask ourselves is the result really a surprise? Is it really a surprise? It's not a surprise, Because if we look at the history of South Africa, it's unique. And when we are looking at reading levels, reading scores, competencies, which includes writing, we cannot divorce ourselves from where we come from. Because we teachers are products of the learning of who they were or the education that they come from as a learner first, and then the teacher training colleges that they have attended, as well as where they land in the classroom. All of that makes it not equal for every teacher in a classroom, and we need to acknowledge that. Number two is we need to look at our changes in curriculum over the years. We started our democracy in 1994, which we introduced an OBE curriculum, which didn't give our teachers who are not skilled teachers because of our history a clear roadmap as to how to teach reading explicitly and systematically. So from the onset, our starting point is not the same for all. Then we changed from curriculum 2005, which didn't give teachers clear direct instructions. We changed to the NCS curriculum, which tried to narrow it down for the teachers, but it wasn't sufficient. So this is still the same teacher in the system who from the onset didn't start off equally on the same foot. Now they have undergone all these curriculum changes. Then in 2010, we realized, okay, OBE is a lot based on constructivism as learner-centered, and we don't have the teachers, or we didn't give teachers sufficient guidance in terms of a curriculum, a pathway that they need to follow. So now we have CAPS. So CAPS is again content heavy. But in all of this, so it has some kind of roadmap for the system, but within CAPS there are also flaws. And so from DBE, what I find encouraging is that we acknowledge this. We see it, we know that the CAPS was written in in English, and then versioned into every other African language, not taking into account the orthographies of any language. That is problem number one. So PILS is not a surprise. Number two is then the emphasis was a lot on EFL, developing English for the transition in grade 4, which is a need because of the system. But DBE acknowledges that, they acknowledge the flaws. So in 2019, they released, or 2020 rather, they released a document as to how to teach reading in African languages, and not just phonics. It is a comprehensive policy or framework that takes every orthography into account and teaches the multifaceted skills and knowledge which is needed for a child to read with comprehension. And it encompasses language comprehension as well as decoding skills, which both of it is important. And now through all these changes, there are certain things that is fundamental to teaching reading. And this is what researchers renowned over the world agreed to in the National Reading Panel report in 2000. And that is there are 5 components which is necessary if you want our children to be literate. The one is phonemic awareness. It is decoding or word or recognition of words of phonics, fluency, comprehension, and vocabulary development. None of that is more important than the other. And none is, it's not, we withhold vocabulary while we are busy developing phonemic awareness or decoding skills. All of it is developed simultaneously. And that is what researchers agreed, and CAPS acknowledges this. But the reality is, for you to be able to answer the PILS questions, you need to be fluent. And fluent is silent in CAPS. So they acknowledge it in section 2 in the clarification notes. But then when they have the plan, the teaching plans and assessment plans for teachers, it's not prominent there. Vocabulary is not explicitly indicated for teachers. Comprehension, they speak about comprehension strategies, but is not explicitly indicated in CAPS either. So CAPS would look at teaching what the teacher needs to teach, but I think in all of this we forgot, what did the learners learn? Are they actually learning? Then we're waiting on the PILS test to tell us that learning didn't take place every 4 years. So DBE, from DBE's side, they're in the process of strengthening gaps, addressing all of these gaps. So last year they started with designing a phonics program in all 11 official languages, unique to the orthography, exactly what my colleague mentioned, taking the fact that Nguni languages is embedded in morphemes. It's longer words. You cannot use another test, which a lot of you would be familiar with, an EGRA test, and use an international benchmark to test the learners' fluency levels. So our research department at DBE has 10 years worth of research in every language where they are setting benchmarks based on the orthographies or the learners in South Africa. Even for English, because our English speakers are not the English speakers of UK or in America or New Zealand. So we can't be using those benchmarks. So these are little policy changes, not little policy changes, as low-hanging fruits, minimal changes that can give us huge results. But if we're not going to fix what is the gaps within policy, the next poll result will give us the same result. Because 288, a point score of 288 that Portia mentioned, we didn't even reach the lowest benchmark. And in the lowest benchmark, just a little bit about the Pearl instrument, a lot of those questions are literal comprehension questions that they couldn't answer. And immediately that should tell us the problem is in decoding, part of the problem is decoding, and then with it goes fluency. And with that, doesn't mean that phonics is more important than comprehension, language comprehension, that is more important than background knowledge, building knowledge, or even vocabulary. It means that everything needs to be treated equal and needs to be taught explicitly and systematically. And we need to make sure that we're not just teaching, that we are also learning. The other thing that I also want to note about our society is that society has changed so much. We are in an instant fixed craze, therefore, hence we would like to put plasters on everything, because we want results immediately. And when we want to address the injustice of the past, it is not something that we can just put a plaster on. And it's not something that is just going to be in the domain of DBE or with Funda one day. It is something that is going to take a collective effort, because it is, like my colleague said, it is about enjoyment, it is about meaning making, it is about, in essence, who we are and how we express ourselves as well.
Thanks. You got really passionate on that one. Just a quick one. Maybe you answered it, but it's an issue of policy and the policy gaps you're talking about. I think you touched on the issue that we are kind of like an instant society. Do you feel, from where you are, from the work you've done, that the policies are forward-thinking and not reactive? I have a fear if that they're reactive, we continue chasing this and we'll be having this conversation 20 years from now, same kind of feel.
That's a loaded question. Okay, I think that from a policy perspective, because we are realizing, because you're in a democracy, not democracy, in a bureaucracy, and when there are funds at play, then the plasters comes to play. But I think from DBE's perspective, it's not reactive, because we have research spanning of 10 works where they have been addressing or looking at how they can support and address the gaps within policy. Also, I think the fact that they are strengthening the current policy and not rewriting and not grabbing from other countries, it is lessons that we as South Africans are learning. It is something organic. It belongs to South Africa. And because we are co-creating that, not just DBE, but with other stakeholders as well, it is something that is going to be our own, that we can claim. But because And because of the organic process, that is going to take time. But then as people, and because we are living in an instant microwave society, sometimes that process, we're not patient enough with that process. And maybe we as society should be more patient and be patient with policy and processes as well.
Thank you. I'm tempted to come back at you on that one, but just I think just maybe to give us because we've talked about the current teachers that we have, and there's this talk that teachers now are not as equipped or not as, for lack of a better word, good as back in the day, as many have said. I think many have uttered it. Francis, from your point, what's your take on the challenges teachers face? And I think as I pose that question to you, I also just want to pose a side one to Dr. Guzula in terms of looking at the same question. What goes beyond literacy as a skill?
Okay. Teacher training is, to me, it's very, very important. There's the notion that at universities, the university is focusing very much on theory, the theoretical aspect, whereas they should have been focusing on the practical, how to make the theory practical in the classroom. There was a time that at a particular university, they decided that they are going to take retired foundation phase teachers. And I'm speaking about the foundation phase because it is grade 4. But these children had been in foundation phase for 3 years, and they should have been trained to read and read with make meaning. So they decided that they're going to take retired foundation phase teachers to assist the lecturers. The lecturers would then teach the theoretical background, and also the content. And then the learners, the students would be divided into smaller groups in order for the facilitators now to come and teach them the how, the pedagogy. How do you teach reading? How do you teach the child to understand what is happening? Now, one cannot separate theory from practice. In every job or whatever work you go in, there should be some theoretical knowledge. And in the teacher training, if we train our teachers, there should be theory. They should know the background. They should know something about, as we said, Vygotsky scaffolding, and we should know constructivism and all of those. They should know that, but learning the theory is not enough. And often universities focus on the theory. They would say, right, now what theory underpins your lesson? To me, it is important that the student knows the theory, have a deep understanding of the theory, but must have the pedagogy, must be able to apply it practically in the classroom. For instance, if I would train the students, then I would say to them, yeah, yes, we are doing the theory now, but and demonstrate to them, this is how we teach reading. For instance, if I can give an example, play-based, if we do the play-based pedagogy as an engaging pedagogy, we know that children, they want to play. They say that play is the work of a child. And if they play, they learn. All the academic abilities that they need, the cognitive development comes through play. Now, if you have, for instance, an example, you have a birthday party in the classroom. And when you have the birthday party, you have everything that you have for the party. You have the birthday card and the cake and the biscuits and the sweets and even the kettle. And in that way, you you're going to have give a child a concrete experience of a birthday party. Then, for instance, the teacher would say, I pour water into the kettle, I pour water, or I pour the juice into the glasses. And when you do that, they see the action, but they also have the words on the board. There's pictures, and the children interact. They're singing the birthday games, and they're playing, they're handing out sweets and things to one another. But at the same time, there is a word on a flashcard and a sentence, and they match it on the board with the picture. In that way, they learn that, yes, symbols become words, but words have meaning. And the meaning now they will see, I pour water into the kettle, and the word is there, the sentence is on the board, they match it. They play around with it. Then also, if you do that, then they will see that words, sounds have words and they have meaning. And then after that, you can perhaps have shared reading. Now they had the experience of the birthday party. And maybe I would take it a little further. One of our contemporary philosophers, Nancy Fraser, she talked, she wrote extensively about the unequal distribution of resources as we have in our country, wealth and resources. And because you had the birthday party, you are also including that little child that perhaps would never had a birthday party. So we also include the pedagogy of care there. And all these things one should train the pre-service teachers in, so that they can have those skills. Because as my colleague said, they must teach them holistically. Then after that, you can then go, and we have different types of reading. Now we can have shared reading, and we have the teacher sitting with a big book, and the big book now is also a birthday party. So the child can now relate, can now see they had the experience of the party. Now they are reading it as the children, as the teacher go through look at the cover of the book and look at the title, telling them there's a name of the story and somebody wrote the story, and they look at the pictures, they do the picture walk through the book. In that, they can now identify, because they had the party in the class. So the teacher would then read and show, as the teacher reads, the words, so that the learners can follow and they share it. And how, I must also give the background of shared reading. Shared reading started because researchers realized, as I said before, that parents must read for their children, that mummies didn't read for their children. So now the shared reading, the macro group sitting there, and the teacher reading it, now the teacher is actually the mummy, because nurturing is part of teacher, and particularly the foundation phase teacher. We have this oxytocin, that is the love hormone, which promotes positive feelings in the body. Now, the teachers must nurture the child. They must have a pedagogy of care, of love. The voice of the child says, teach me but love me. And when they do that, we will think positive feelings, where does that fit into this whole picture now? If we feel positive, it actually promotes positive feelings, and it actually promotes development, reading development, because one system in the body speaks to the rest. I think I can ask you, or maybe you will think back to the days when you were studying at a school, that you actually loved the subjects of the teachers that you liked. Now that is part of it. So there we have, then we can have the shared reading, and afterwards it is the small group reading, where the teacher now can share with the child, with this one-on-one, include the little one in the pedagogical situation, sitting there with the child, small group teaching, where they then, she can then meet the needs of every individual learner. In that way, we can then also, the teacher can determine, assess, where is this child? How did the child understand? Can she make meaning? Because then you can ask questions, you can do assessment there. And now, if I think about the particular classroom, a foundation phase classroom, you sit here with a group of learners, but the others are still there. They are not gone, they are still there. And you must monitor them. Each little group has its own worksheets, and the teacher sitting here must teach this group, but also make sure that the others are working. That is why I would say, and it is from experience, because I taught all the phases, that the foundation phase teacher should be a specialist in the field, and the foundation phase teacher teaches differently, because those learners, they must still obtain so many skills, which they already have in intermediate phase. And the intermediate phase is totally different. Foundation phase is actually the most difficult, but I would say rewarding phase to teach also. And I would add, I would say, you know, in my opinion, foundation phase teachers should actually be the highest paid educators. Yes. Really, because it is such that you need so many other skills that other teachers don't have here. Teachers, in the foundation phase, you teach the child. In the other phases, you teach your subject. I know, I also taught my subject there. Yes, and yes, and we also know South Africa, if we look and we think about the socio-economic circumstances and all those learners coming into the classroom, and you must know, I always say that we have this relationship of knowing in the pedagogical situation. The teacher must know each and every child. 40 of them, and we know 40 is actually a small number, 50 of them. So how do you do that? Because each child is a unique person. And we are talking about reading, but I'm thinking about the whole spectrum, that those learners, they must develop, there's so much that they must still do, that they must, skills that they must still obtain, and the foundation phase teacher must guide them, take them on this journey in education. And yeah, you must be mother, you must be psychologist, you must be doctor. There's so much that you need to do. Okay, I think I said enough. Thank you very much.
Over to you, Doc.
So you asked about the challenges that the teachers are facing in the classroom. And one of the biggest challenges, and I think I'm going to say something because you said something about the focus on EFAL, right? Because we must prepare the children for the transition to English medium in grade 4. So one of the things that I want to say is that we have a policy of 1997 that doesn't require a switch to English in grade 4. We, for more than, maybe less than 30, it was 1997, so for 27 years, we haven't implemented a policy that addresses the language issue in education. So, as Neville Alexander would put it, those who were advantaged before the fall of apartheid are still the advantaged after the fall of apartheid. So with the language in education policy, the issue there was to address the role of language in learning. Now, the Africans and the English-speaking children are the only advantaged kids in this country. They learn through their home language from the cradle to university. They speak their language at home. They have parents who speak the same language. They have books, many books that are written in that language, and they do not have to deal with the transition. It is the black children who speak African languages who must suffer the transition in grade 4, where they must now stop learning in their home languages and learn through the medium of English. And they struggle because now we are making them to be English speakers. We are making them, we take them as English speakers with a deficit. Because now there's a deficit attached to them. They can't read in any language. How can they be able to read when they've learned English for 2 to 3 hours a week in the foundation phase, and they must now start learning all of their subjects in English when they get to grade 4? We know the burden of grade 4, 5, 6, 7, that there are a lot of subjects for any child, whether they are English or Afrikaans or Xhosa. There's a lot of subjects that they must deal with. So the English and Afrikaans child only deal with the burden of the heavy burden of added subjects. They don't deal with the language because they can speak it, the parents can speak it, teachers can speak it. But the African language speaking children must deal with English in grade 4. They do not speak it, they do not read it, they do not write it. But they must learn. All the textbooks are written in English. And the teachers are discouraged from using the children's mother tongues in the classroom in grade 4. They get circulars that tell them to speak only English when they teach science or when they teach mathematics. And I think that this is violence on the children. It is violence, colonial violence on the children. And then we wonder why there's a lot of dropout. Because the children who can see that there's something wrong here, like they saw in 1976 with Afrikaans, they see that there's something wrong here. In 1976, teachers were teaching in Afrikaans in grade 9, but they didn't know the Afrikaans. They couldn't read the Afrikaans, the same teachers. The students stood up and said, "You can't even speak Afrikaans, but you are teaching in Afrikaans." And today the children and the teachers must struggle with English. And both of them get the deficit positioning in this country. The deficit positioning that says our teachers cannot teach, they do not have the skills, our children cannot read and write. And it also comes to us because we teach at universities. So now the new lecturers that have come in are also problematic because they are not teaching these teachers well. Because, of course, there's always been the burden of apartheid and the Bantu education that made a lot of black people feel incompetent, that they can't do anything, and that they couldn't learn deeply enough the stuff that they needed to know. And of course, institutions of higher learning were dominated by English-speaking and African-speaking colleagues who cannot speak African languages and teach these teachers to teach their African languages. So that is a big issue, big elephant in the room. We should not be switching to English in the intermediate phase. The policy is a multilingual one. It asks for what the English and African children have been getting since 1925. Bilingual education, multilingual education. In 1925, when the Union of South Africa, South Africa was run by the Afrikaners and the British, they decided to form schools where the Afrikaans children and the English children were in one class, and the teacher had to be bilingual and use both languages to teach them. We still have bilingual schools. You only have to go to schools in Somerset to find some of those bilingual schools. You go to Tygerberg, you get some schools that are bilingual, English, Afrikaans, and the question papers come in English and Afrikaans. Now we've been asking for the same thing. Let the teacher who teaches these grade 4s use English and isiXhosa, English and isiZulu, English and Sesotho to be able to teach these children. And that until the 21st of February, where Minister Angie Motshekga launched bilingual education in East London. It wasn't happening in this country. That's why we're talking about patching the symptoms. So we look at the issues with literacy. We're not looking at the issues with language, because those children who are learning literacy in school must still go back and be helped by their parents for their homework. And if parents have not been reading also in English, it's a struggle to get their children learning in English. So we are asking for the impossible. So what we are asking here is that in school, teachers must be allowed to bring strategies for teaching reading and writing other than just decoding. We value decoding. It is one of the strategies and components of reading that must be done, but there must be something much more to it. And we talk of literacy as a social practice, not just a technical skill. When we talk of literacy as a social practice, we mean that literacy must be part of everyday activity that you do. It's not some cultural relativity thing, whereas people interpret social cultural practice. No, what it means is that if you use reading and writing daily in your life, like children have bedtime stories in middle-class homes. They have bedtime stories in middle-class homes. From when they are babies, they are read to by their parents. They observe parents who read and who write. Then they try to read and write themselves. And the parents are supporting them as they fall in making these attempts at reading and writing. They take them to book fairs. They visit the library every weekend. So there's something exciting for the child, that we are going to the library to take out 10 books so that I can read for over the next 2 weeks. That is what cultural practice means, making something part of your everyday culture. We know, I often say this, with soccer players, with rugby players, they know the game. You can learn the rules of the game. That when you play rugby, you must do this, you must do this, you must do this, you must do that. But to be a rugby player, you have to practice playing rugby all the time to become a rugby player. So therefore, what we are saying is that, yes, the skills are important, but children must be reading and make reading part of their daily social life. But also, we must stop with the deficit positioning of the working class families to think that they do not have literacies in their own families, because there are literacies in those families. We must document what are the literacy practices that are used in these families. And after documenting them, build our own teaching and learning strategies on those literacy practices that happen in the communities, that are happening in the homes, so that they become relatable to the children. We know in community we have different institutions where children can be socialized into literacy. Maybe I'm taking a sociological approach here that says, in society, people use literacy, and literacy has to be contextualized. And in society, we have various institutions. The family is one institution. The church is another institution. The library is another institution. The friendship groups and literacy clubs that are happening are other institutions. So we need to socialize children in these institutions to work with the literacies that are there. And then we need to build our teaching from those institutions, because teaching literacy out of context makes it difficult for the children. And we must teach it in the languages that the children are comfortable in. Thank you.
Thanks, Doc. It's interesting, the issue of the apartheid legacy. Just reflecting, I think only yesterday I asked a friend of mine, it's a languages thing, and I think that transition to a particular language, some of us have, we get lucky and you go to good schools, so your English is very articulate. Like, so I remember like actually saying to this friend of mine, I've noticed you shift to Xhosa more than you did 5 years ago, which was odd because psychologically that's what's being sort of like imprinted into the young ones growing up, that this is the switch. Just also, I want to say I'll be taking questions in the next 10 minutes. I know we are live and I've seen some questions come through on Slido. So while I just shoot one to Portia and Natalie, especially on collaborations, and you've done a lot of work in this, and I think as an NGO you've got it right in partnering with We Need to Talk, because we've been knocking on your door, you guys are keeping us out. Like we so in terms of just maybe that stakeholder engagement, how you've navigated it and the importance of it in this particular situation, and also at the same time, Natalie, just the thought of some of the interventions or the current maybe high-level interventions that are there on a collaborative nature that are available currently for such platforms or such situations.
Okay, so yes, sure. I'm still trying to get everything in that I'm listening to, which is so amazing, so interesting. Collaboration is a word that we use often. Partnerships. It's nice to use those words, but it's not. It's similar to what the ladies were speaking about, even just about literacy. If you want to collaborate, especially government with NGO or MPOs, it's a long road, because as Natalie says, the government works in a bureaucracy. I come from an MPO, we're a little bit more relaxed, you can get things done quicker. And I must say that the collaboration between Fundawande and the WCD, also the collaboration between Fundawande and the ECDOE, and the collaboration between Fundawande and the Limpopo Department of Education has taken years to get to where we are now. And so I acknowledge my colleagues in the Eastern Cape and Limpopo for the work they've done in the collaboration there. I can basically speak from Western Cape. So there was this call for us to get involved and to work alongside WCD, and we had already started slowly by providing the anthologies for the isiXhosa schools, and then there was a call for another language, and however you might think of it here, let's not debate politically, it happened to be Afrikaans. I just want to say that we have our rural districts where our children, all the colors or all the races, whatever you want to use, every child there is basically, and I agree with my colleague there, they're in Afrikaans school because they're on a farm or they're on a. And it's been tough. It's tough because they go home, that is not their home language. So we have tried on that to ensure that and we're still working on it. We haven't got it 100% yet. But we have tried to make sure that our books in every language, in every African language that we are working in, is as authentic as possible. We have not used, here's an English story and use it. We have tried to get the stories that were written to be as authentic to the audience that it's going to be given to. So all our isiXhosa stories are authenticated by isiXhosa specialists. All our Sepedi stories are authenticated by our Sepedi specialists. And not only in Fundawande, but outside of Fundawande as well. So the collaboration between WCD and Fundawande has come on since 2019. And we started slowly. We started with a pilot of 50 schools, 40 Afrikaans home language, 10 isiXhosa home language schools across the 8 districts in the province. And the pilot started in grade 1. In the next year, we added another 50 schools of the WCED with 50 control schools. Then in 2021, we started a rollout, which is never, except the GPLMS, we've never had a rollout scaled in a province before, and we are very, very excited. It's daunting. There's lots of work that we have to do together. So that's how Natalie and I. Natalie is, we're not doing English, but the isiXhosa specialists at head office in Siki, we work very closely with. We were the Afrikaans specialist, Alberta. We work very closely alongside her to make sure not only that we develop the books correctly, but that the books get out there. So we are now distributing across our eight districts. The way we've worked, we've had a cascade model. So Funda one day, specialists train the subject advisors train the teachers, and like that. But as you know, with cascade model, sometimes things get watered down or just gets changed or missed. So we have put interns in the district offices to help with distribution. We have put interns in there to do dipsticks to see where we are at, coverage, book coverage. There's such a lot of aspects to the collaboration. But I want to say the biggest takeaway for me in working with a government entity, working with an NGO, has been the fact that you have to build relationships. If you don't build relationships, you can forget, like in any area of our lives. If you are not maintaining a relationship, you're not going to get anywhere. So it's a give and take. It's like, what can we bring to the table? What can WCD bring to the table? How do we work together? And it's maintaining that relationship on an ongoing basis. So this year we have rolled out to grade 1 and 2. Next year we will roll out to grade 1, 2, and 3, and then our rollout phase will be done. And then we have to look beyond that. What is our collaboration going to be like after that? We've also, it's my last point, we also have a reading academy, which is in the 3 languages, which all our videos are in the 3 languages. We've tried to be as authentic to every language, and teachers can do, anybody can do that reading academy. In-service teachers, pre-service teachers can go and do it online. There's no cost. We also have a coaching, an instructional coaching course, and here's one of our products, our first cohort. We have engaged with subject advisors, teachers, lead teachers, departmental heads. Because, like Natalie says, when you become a teacher, or when you become a departmental head, nobody trains you. You're just like, oh, you were a good teacher, you can be a departmental head. But all the things that you have to do in that job, no one trains you. So we are very excited that both our courses have been done, and we have had successes both through Rhodes University, and it's been also vetted, and we've had evaluations from Harvard University, and we've managed, I think, a little bit to touch with the touch point of how do you get a teacher to change her behavior. How do you teacher behavioral change is a big focus for us now, and so our collaboration will go on as we work with the WCDs, with the teachers, with the subject advisors, with the head office to be able to I've always learned from my coach, if you're able to move a person just a little bit, if I can move from this point just to where Telani is sitting, I have done something well. I have achieved something. And it's those little steps that add up. So in a collaboration, we have definitely moved, and we are still moving. Not getting everything right all the time, but that's why we collaborate. Thanks, Stella.
Thank you.
Stakeholders. I think the problem is so deep that we cannot do it alone. And at WCD and then from DBE, we want a whole of society approach, because to change reading is in culture. It is every 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 partner in culture and society needs to bring their part. I believe that if we could throw all our gears behind the springboks, if all of us can get our energy behind creating a reading culture in every community, irrespective of your race, irrespective of your language, we will get it right. Because if we just listen to the language policy, language and education policy, and it's grossly unfair, but the reality is, and someone mentioned it before, I think you mentioned it, that teachers are trained in English. So it means that we need a curriculum in all the other African languages. We also need the LTSM in all African languages. So the problem is bigger than we think. And there is no way that the department would be able to address it. Yes, they acknowledge it and they're putting policy in place. But policy is sometimes only good on paper, and it's up to us to bring that policy to life. And therefore, we value partnerships and we want to engage with partnerships. Because if we just look at WordWorks, I'm hoping WordWorks is here. Grade R is early learning is another landmine. And because of the partnership with WordWorks, we have a fantastic e-lit program, a stellar program that is in every grade R class and is being scaled in Gauteng at the moment. Because of WordWorks, we have our math as well. Because of Funda Wande, we have an Afrikaans, we have a program for the other two languages in the province, which is not doing so well in our systemic evaluation, external evaluation. And language in our country was used as a political tool. So it's not just language. It is something that we need to address because it is about who you are as a person. So if I reject your language, in essence, I'm telling you, you're not good enough. And language is much more than the African languages also. It is, I think it's something to do with our culture as South Africans. Because a French person can say something in English and speak wrong and nobody will laugh. Or they won't feel inferior. We will listen to what they are saying. Somehow in a South African context, it's always sometimes first pronunciation, vocabulary, or syntax. And that is something in culture. That is nothing to do with the policy also. That is our very essence of our being. Also, are we modeling reading to our learners or to our children at home? We as adults, as teachers, being in education, do we read? Do we model that? Also, what is also emerging actually from polls is the boy child is not reading either. So from a curriculum perspective, do we have stories in their interest? So we have partnerships, coming back to the stakeholders. Funda Wande has designed books, authentic books in a South African context. Zenix has written more than 1,200 titles in 9 African languages. Fiction and non-fiction books, decodable books, as well as story books for learners. So I just want to say that we cannot do it alone, and every person in society has a role to play. Whether you are an optometrist, you can help us with screening. Whether you are an audiologist, you can check for physical hearing loss. Whether you are Oxford, and Oxford is one of our partners that we work closely with, or any other funder, not funder, but publication or other stakeholder. Thank you, Karinza. Or any other stakeholder. Because when we are looking at the role that we have in society and we work together collectively, I believe, and I'll close off with this, we have all the ingredients, but we're not just mastering how we're putting it all together. So it's all in different boxes. Not Balawanda, Nalibali as well. Cadbury's has a brilliant literacy campaign also. I've been reaching out to their rep because I wanted in the schools, and for some reason, I couldn't get hold of them to get it, to have the connection between the story writing of Cadbury's, the chocolates where they have the story writing, and the reading. There's a disconnect there. Brilliant campaign. But it could have been so much bigger. It could have landed in every classroom for every child. Another missed opportunity. So I think having conversations like this is part of narrowing, bridging that gap. It's part of all putting our ingredients together to bake that cake, which is getting to the illiteracy that we have currently in our country.
We at Cornerstone want to bake that cake with you, so we will be knocking on your door. I think we'll be knocking on your door as well. The head of the education school, Sean, is here, so just letting you know. I'm going to open up for questions, but just a quick one from you. You've obviously done a lot. Are you incorporating or leveraging technology in the space you're in, and how?
You're asking me, eh? Yes. Yes, definitely. Just the fact that you want, to be able to reach as many teachers as possible. We have our online, I can't get to the word. Platforms. Thank you. You see, Karenza, you needed to be here to help with all the words. We have a lot of online platforms, like doing our Reading Academy is online. The coaching course isn't online, but it's not. We do have contact sessions online, and then you do. So there's no. You don't have to physically go to a place. We also have an amazing WhatsApp bot. I'm not an IT person, so I have no idea how to put it there, but our WhatsApp bot, because we have a WhatsApp bot which allows the teachers to ask questions. The questions, of course, in the back, we get the questions, we pass it on to our specialists, and they answer the questions like that. We have a WhatsApp bot even for making sure that the deliveries of all the thousands of books get to the schools, and if there's a shortage, they put it on the WhatsApp bot. We have the WhatsApp bot for our internal, just checking where everything is, and with our collaboration with the WCED, all the schools are on our WhatsApp bot. We can, by a touch of a button, be able to get to any teacher, any departmental head, any subject advisor, any district coordinator, and going up in the, I just can't get to Mr. Brent Waters on that WhatsApp bot, but I'm working towards getting to him there. So yes, we've definitely been able to do that, and our IT department is working on other avenues as well.
But I would like to add that teachers need to be trained to use the technology, because I've come into classrooms and then I've noticed that they have all the equipment there, but they don't know how to use it. So that is important. And if we do teacher training, then our students should also be equipped for the smart classroom, so that they know, because technology permeates life. And we see small children already walking with phones. So, well, we know about screen time and that, but we cannot exclude technology. It is important. It is part of the classroom. We need, and the teachers. And often, if we think about our society, many of the learners, they because of the socio-economic circumstances, they cannot have a particular experience. So with technology, you can bring the outside world into the classroom, and you can take the children up Table Mountain. You can let them hear the lion roar. You can also, you see, I'm a teacher. You can also take them under the sea so that they can see the marine life. And in that way, what the teacher tries to teach, technology can bring in. We have this new, not so new, but another theory, and I'm always thinking about theories, which is the theory of connectivism. And we have Siemens is there. 2005, he started about it, and then Downs in 2022, and I have to read it now. Siemens said, technology is altering our brains. If we think about the learners, definitely altering our brains. The tools we use define and shape our thinking. Many of the processes previously handled by cognitive information processing can now be offloaded or supported by technology. And Downs said, a learning theory, connectivism is a learning theory for a digital age in which we live, the 21st century. So we must prepare our teachers, pre-service teachers, for the 21st century smart classroom. And he also says learning occurs throughout human and non-human networks. And we see, how did you get here? We use the phone to connect and to invite you to come to our critical dialogues. Connectivism as pedagogy. And if I read this, then you will see it is old, but it's also new. To learn is to practice and reflect. And we must train our students to become reflective practitioners. They must reflect before they plan the lesson. And I'm always talking about teacher training, reflect before they plan the lesson. How can they make it exciting? How can they make reading an exciting learning adventure? What do they, if they have a print-rich classroom, they must also be able to let the child feel welcome. And I want to be in the classroom. I want to know what is in those books. But the teachers should have the skills to make that learner, because you know they have this inquiry mind, and we have inquiry-based approach also. So if we use all of those, I think it is not the end. We can make a success of it. We can solve our problems, all of us, as we sit here, and in society, as we all come from different platforms, and definitely we can make a success, because our learners must read. Lifelong learning, I would say lifelong reading. Although we have the language problem, although we have all these others, we cannot give up on our learners. It must be a pedagogy of care. The voice of the child says, love me, but teach me. And the voice of the child says, teach me, but love me. And that is actually what we must instill in our teachers. So we can have all the theories, we can have everything, but if you don't build up a beautiful, trusting relationship with the learner, then all the knowledge that you have is I can't say wasted, it's just for yourself. Okay?
Thanks, Francis. Are there any questions? Can I take 3? I'll do one here. Gentleman with the black cap. I see the gentleman right at the end. Koketo, is there a roving mic somewhere here? Thank you. So I've got one right up front. Okay.
Can I go for it? Yeah. Hi, my name is Sue Little, and I work for what we hope to be the world's biggest literacy campaign. And we hope to impact 1 billion school children by 2025 and 2027. And we're doing that by promoting parents to turn on the subtitles while their kids watch television. And we've done a lot of research on this worldwide. We've spoken to a lot of academics, and I think based on everything that you're all saying is that we need to work together, but there's a massive awareness issue that we have. If you are all in literacy, you're all in education, you have an echo chamber, you understand the literacy problem, but most of the parents out there don't have a clue. And to your point, not having first language reading books, not having a caretaker or a parent. 62% of children in South Africa grow up with a single parent household or a caretaker only. So how is the mother, the grandmother, the gogo supposed to look after their child while cooking and cleaning? And now they must read. They don't. They put them in front of the TV. They give them their devices. So my goal is to give awareness to all of what you are doing. Your work needs to be seen by the greater population and brands. So brands, Cadbury's, why do they do that? They want to create content. They want to give value. My role is to go to those brands and say, put your money, your advertising money, into raising awareness about the literacy crisis in South Africa. Whether it is Unilever's cleaning products, Cadbury's chocolate, there is a way that they can tell the same story. So please reach out to me. My name is Sue Little, Sue without an E. Find me on LinkedIn. I want to help you. I want to raise awareness, and we will beat this. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. I will reach out as well. Gentleman with the black cap over there.
Oh, thank you very much. My name is Songa Zomazizi. I'm a final year student in education. Thank you first to our panelists. I was panicking at some point as well, having been aware of this crisis. You provide very interesting analysis, on this crisis, on this report by Pulse. I had an interest, man. I was hoping maybe you speak on this around the effect of food nutrition. I come to understand that some learners just come to school just to enjoy breakfast. This breakfast now in school, this lunch, but on that way, they are finding a way to learn, we have not yet addressed that, but I believe that coming also from a poor background, you cannot teach me anything, or I cannot write anything when I'm hungry, especially when I don't know the next food, when it's going to come from, I think as well, I thought I was going to hear this as well on the Pulse study as well, but it was not there, But this one, you provide a very beautiful analysis, which cleared my mind, I was really panicking. My panicking, for it comes as a person who's a final year student, going to school, going to the workplace as well, having to be facing these challenges as well, and really, there's really tricks in society around children who can't write, who can't speak, but of course, there are many effects which young people are facing, especially dealing with the issue of hunger, and teachers having to be psychologists at some point, But my last point, Prof, there's a new bill, Bella Bill. What is your view? I also saw that there are many parents who's against this bill. Is this bill, maybe you have responded to this, it's a patch on this crisis. I'm sure also this bill is in response of this Pulse crisis. Something in me tells me that, should we support the bill? Does it make sense? I'm just saying in the view on this bill, or what's then our responsibility in making sure that this bill does not see its light, Also, I'm also on the view that this bill, it has funding on it. Has funding, Hey, I'm worried about this thing as well. Hey, please, man, assist me on this thing. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. I think while we ponder, you want to ask it before the answer before?
I don't know if there are other hands.
There's one more hand that I just wanted to take. Then, yeah.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sibulele, and I'm a school principal of a girls-only school in Kailicha called Molomhlaba. Dr. Kuzula knows about it. She's one of the co-founders of the school. My question relates to a point that was mentioned by Natalie about the national framework to the teaching of reading of African languages in the foundation phase. I know that the framework was created to answer the question of English hegemony in the way that African languages are taught. I also know that Boalit is against the framework, and I know you guys released a paper criticizing the framework. But my question is to you, Dr. Kuzula. Do you think that it can be saved? Do you think if we take into consideration the points that you've raised about the framework, that there is room for it to actually find life and meaning? And because I know one of the things that the framework points out is that an English child will read, I work for myself, and that's 4 words. And a Xhosa child will read ndiyazisebenzela, and that's 1 word. And then at the end of the day, we say that Xhosa children can read. But the manner, the way that our languages are structured is that they are big on morphology. So do you think, Dr. Kuzula, I know you're against it, but do you think that there is room for it to be saved, and can it actually be implemented? And just to you, Natalie, what is your view on the socio-cultural approach to reading that Dr. Kuzula spoke about? Thank you.
I think Dr. Kuzula and Natalie.
Thank you, Budi, for raising the poverty issue. It is a real thing. Poverty is real. And which is why during COVID-19, when children had to stay home, all of us were worried about, nutrition. Like, they come to school, we know they eat. And then in COVID, there was time when they had to stay home and couldn't come to school. That was the main worry. And it is not only a worry for younger children. On Tuesday, in our staff meeting, we're talking about our students who are hungry at university. And we're looking into options as to how to help our students at university have a meal in our department so that we have a nutrition program for university students. So this is a real issue. It is a real issue that cannot be isolated from, we can't just say we're fixing education through meals only, but we have to offer meal, we have to offer protection and safety for our children, and then we have to teach them. So you ask a very important question about the bill. Now the bill addresses so many aspects that I cannot speak on. But the one aspect that I can speak on is the language issue. Because since 1994, we've had our constitution that says all 11 official languages are official and that children have a right to learn in them, right? That's number one. And then in 1997, we have the language in education policy that says we must promote bilingual and multilingual education. And that urges schools through their governing bodies to formulate language policies that will be inclusive linguistically to our children. Through all this time, if you look at primary schools in southern suburbs, you will wonder, where have they made an effort to put isiXhosa as another language that must be taught in schools? Because in I have a home in the northern suburbs, and my children, it's actually the school that they went to is a parallel medium, which is bilingual school. Have a class for English speakers and a class, grade 1 class for African speakers. My son and my daughter attended that school. But the school taught English and Afrikaans only, even when there are Xhosa speaking children in the school. The school didn't make an effort to provide isiXhosa as another language that we want as parents, because everybody assumes that when we send children to English medium schools, we want to be English. But no, we don't want to be English. The reason why we send our children to the school is because we still experience the apartheid legacy in our education system. We have a 2-tiered education system, one for the poor and one for the rich. And through that apartheid education system, many schools in townships and villages do not offer all the things that parents wish for their children. Like, for example, is there a sporting, is there an organized sport in the school where your son, if they are not academic, they can still thrive as a sportsman in rugby and earn a salary and a living at the end of the year? Do we offer arts in our school in such a way that art, first of all, is part of the curriculum and can also form part of the extra curriculum? Do we have music that where children can also play instruments, you know, and be musicians? No, we don't have that. In black schools, you find music only in a choir, where they practice for a competition and then it stops after the competition. You find sports, athletics done only when there's going to be a competition, and then it stops after that. So it is not English that parents are seeking when they send the children to English medium schools. It is access to resources that they do not have. So now, but language policies are supposed to be dynamic and flexible. They are determined on the basis of the school community, linguistic community. They can't stay as static as they are. Now the schools, because they are comfortable with the apartheid language policy, they haven't been flexible in saying, our student body has changed. We no longer have English only speaking, white English only speaking children or African speaking children. Now we have these other children who speak other languages. Now let's reconsider, let's review the language policy so that it becomes inclusive. Schools have delayed doing that, governing bodies have delayed. So we went to the Eastern Cape in 2013 for 2 years, 13 and 14. My children, for the first time when my daughter was doing grade 7, was offered an opportunity to learn isiXhosa, and my son was doing grade 3. But all along I was teaching my children isiXhosa at home. They could read and write it and read a chapter book by the time Tumi got to grade 7. And then we came back to Cape Town. The primary school that my son went to when we came back in the southern suburb didn't have isiXhosa. I asked for isiXhosa in a parent meeting like this, and you know what I was told? No, isiXhosa is not a problem. The high school teachers have no problem with children who come from this school, who've been learning Mamemi Momu, even in grade 7, and the teachers don't feel like there's a problem there. And I'm like, if there's a problem for English, I mean, English and Afrikaans have got a foundation from preschool to grade 7. And then the high school teacher builds on that foundation. Why is it African language teachers who are teaching in high school do not deserve to build on a foundation that is already laid for the children? Now you have these schools that have refused to change their language policies. And the Bella Bill says to them, change the language policies so that you are inclusive of all South Africans that are in your vicinity. And as a result, some schools have, because of the fees must fall movement, we became the parents who said, hey, coloniality must fall too. So we went to the schools where our children were going as parents, and we demanded isiXhosa. And then over time, working with the schools, not against the schools, we assisted 2 schools in the primary schools in the southern suburbs to formulate language policies that teach isiXhosa as a first additional language, not as a third language. Our children can already speak isiXhosa, so they don't need Mamemi Momu like in that way. So those schools are not affected by the Bella Bill. The schools that are affected are the ones that have refused to change. And also, we now we move, social mobility happens, and people live in mixed communities. So schools that used to be Afrikaans only still want to be Afrikaans only in a South Africa that is multilingual. English schools, accept other language speakers, even if they're gonna force English. But African schools do not want to accept black children who want English, because Africans, we know about African nationalism that wanted separate schools for everybody. So they still want to keep the schools African schools. But all we are asking for is like the school that my son went to, have a parallel medium. Give an English class for the children who want to be taught in English, and have another class that is taught in Afrikaans. And those schools are refusing. Now the Bella Bill is saying, but you cannot have a child living in Gills River and say they must go to Kailicha for them to get another language. So schools must be inclusive in that sense. That's what the Bella Bill says for me. So I think then it gives the responsibility to the HOD to force the schools now to change, because after all these years, the schools have refused for 30 years to change. And coming to your question, Puti, about, thank you for working at Molo Mhlaba. Let me acknowledge that. It's a dear school to my heart. We started it for girls, and we had the multilingual language policy. So the framework, I don't know if you've read it again, because after critiquing the framework, we were then invited to come and work with the framework to insert what we thought was missing in the framework. But of course, when people talk about the framework, they still worry about what we added in the framework, because it was not supposed to be there. Because the framework was meant to be for phonics instruction. And here we come saying it is not only phonics that will enrich children's learning. We inserted emergent literacy because it didn't attend to our young children in preschool. That's what the framework didn't do. It didn't acknowledge emergent literacies at all. Yet we know our young children already begin reading when they see reading role models at home. They begin to read, but their reading is pretend reading, right? And they are drawing, they will draw people, squiggles, and they will write. And we work with that because for us, early literacy starts like that. You have to start there. You cannot start with decoding before you've gone through emergent literacies. Now, we were inserting those things in the framework, but also raising issues about morphological awareness, which is not there currently because apparently it was made to work with phonological awareness. And then the other things that we were critiquing about the framework was the fact that it is, the focus on skills approaches comes from a psycholinguistic and cognitive psychology. Now we are saying if you want to teach children holistically, you can draw from different fields. You can draw from cognitive psychology. You can also draw from sociology and sociocultural approaches, because all these things have to work together. And we have to train our teachers to understand that you cannot teach children outside of context. That's what our sociocultural perspective brings. It is context. And then we also have to show that there is much more that needs to be taught in school over and above reading. There's writing that must be taught. And we believe in the 4 roles of a reader and a writer. The reader must decode. It's important. And they can also encode, right? We also believe that the reader must be a text user and a text producer. So if you teach children to use a book, like let's say you are baking and you read a recipe book, the child must know that I can use this text when I'm baking. So let me read, what are the ingredients needed? What are the measurements? That's what we mean by being a text user. But they can also be text producers. Like look at the grandmas who have beautiful recipes, but they have never written them down. Working with their grandmothers at home, they can make up recipe books themselves, thus becoming text producers. Thirdly, the role of the reader must be a text analyst. We must teach children critical literacy, because if we don't teach critical literacy, we run the risk of being indoctrinated, of not questioning what goes on as truth in society. And children are the best people to be taught critical literacy because they know about injustice. Your younger child will ask you, why are you giving 5 rands to my brother for tuck shop and you're giving me 1 rand for tuck shop? They already work with criticality in their life. Why not build on that when we are teaching readers? So that is what could be salvaged if we were to write a framework, and it must focus on writing as well. Thank you.
I think that your question regarding what do I feel about, I think that reading is multifaceted. It's not just about decoding, it is not just about phonics, it is about teaching the skill of reading of code, but also teaching children to be strategic readers in their reading. So the two of them, it goes hand, those components, that is, it goes hand in hand. The one is not more important than the other, because where does reading start? It starts with language. It starts with knowledge of the world. It starts with vocabulary. And that is what you meant when you said speaking, reading, engaging. For text, for speaking, you need to have the language. So I'm not saying that decoding is more important than all the other components. What I'm saying is that if we look at how we taught reading before, there was a strong emphasis on language comprehension, and we neglected decoding skills. And decoding skills starts with phonological awareness. It starts with emergent reading. It starts with having a go at writing, using your code, using your language, drawing, expressing yourself. Also, again, reading and writing goes hand in hand, because when I have the code, I am able to express using the code. So although we want expression, although we are developing knowledge of the world, text features, not just fantasy stories or fairy tales, but also writing fiction and non-fiction text, and grammar and language, all of that needs to be taught explicitly. And the assumption that we have sometimes, that by exposing children to many storybooks, or by immersing them in literature, that they will be able to pick up the skill of reading. That is also a concern. But you need language, you need knowledge of the world, you need vocabulary to latch onto the code. So all of those are important aspects, and if one of it is neglected, there will be a gap. I think the key rather is we need to know what we are teaching, why we are teaching, did learning actually occur, which part is lacking, and build reflective practices as part of our teaching practices. Then we will know what to do and when to do it, and improve our reading skills and writing skills, because reading is inhaling and writing is exhaling. We need to produce. Writing is the product also of reading, but writing for expression, you don't have to have the code to express yourself also.
Thanks. I'm cognizant of time, and I think I'll take one more question. But also, I just want to pose two questions that came from the online space, if you will let me, because time is a thing. So if you say, hey, put your mic down, I will, and we'll call it a night. So the questions we have, and these came from Slido, so they're online. What does corrective action look like regarding capacitating teachers with reading methodologies, equally enabling parents to be part and parcel of the combination of serious play, educational play, and learning continuity from classroom to home environment? So I guess I'm throwing that out in the air. And again, I am cognizant of time. And then there is one that also says, in the public school setting, the challenges are inclusive of resource challenges with stakeholder within education. Do we turn to, I have no idea how this question is structured. It actually does not make sense. So is it from anyone in the room? It's, oh, wow. Okay, I will go to the third one, which takes over the second one. Apart from foundation phase, are our ECDs capacitated with resources to kickstart educational play reading and moving forward into foundation phase learning? And then I will take one more question from, I see the lady in the, I'll take two questions, but please make them short. Please make the questions very short and to the point. So I'll take the two at the back.
Good evening. My name is Shani, and I'm very proud to say that I work for the SOS Children Home based in Gardens. We are a family of 44 young boys and girls. And my biggest problem that I'm struggling with at the moment in our home is we've got children from different ages, ranging from 5 to 18. Some of our children come in and they've never been to school. They at the age of 8, 9, some of our children has lived in cars. They don't know what it is to go to school. My problem is, how do I go back and teach them that foundation? Because schools are rejecting them because they're too old to go to grade 1 or to grade R. So they're in such a backlog that now we put them in a school of skills, but there's no there's no opportunity for employment. Nobody's going to take them. So how can I encourage the people that even my childcare workers, my social workers, on giving hope to those children? Because we are hopeless. We don't know where to go. The foundation is not there. There's no parent that read for them. And because it's from all races and all denominations, language is an issue. We've got Afrikaans, we've got English, we've got from all over the country. And it's sad. I'm the fundraiser, and I'm struggling to get our children, I'm struggling to give hope to the people that work with us, because we don't know where to go with those children. We want to lay at the foundation that there is hope and you do have a future, but where do we go?
Thank you. May I ask to also make it short? I'm also considering that the panelists have to answer 4 questions in pretty much a 5-minute time.
Thank you so much. I'll be very brief. My name is Malbongwe from the Learning Trust. We work with after-school programs throughout the country, and I'm responsible for our portfolio in the Western Cape. I think one of the most important things in addressing some of the issue of literacy is the fact that we have not brought communities on board. There's always a gap between the community, the home, and the school. And for instance, there's Lokshin Mobile Library in Vryheid that run in after-school programs that supplements the work of teachers in schools. But our approaches have always been very corporatist. It's it's the state, big business, big NGO, and all the emerging small NGOs on the ground, which are community-based, work with both the parents, the learners, and the teachers, and have the greatest access out of all the stakeholders that are there, are very actually excluded in the value creation. Because I think addressing any challenge is creating new value. And I think, are we speaking to that, or are we just speaking amongst ourselves? I think that's another important question we just need to ask ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Who wants to take those questions? Or any?
The last one.
Okay.
Okay. I wanted to, because your question, Puti, relates to the issue that was discussed around collaboration here. And I did have but because of time, we could not all answer that. I did have thoughts about that kind of collaboration that you're talking about. That there are many organizations in our communities doing great work. Many of them run by women, many of them run by men, or a mix of both or more. So, but because their work is not linked to research, and so they don't have funding to get their work evaluated. That work is not seen as producing anything. And the only projects that get to be heard about are those that have big funding and those that go on a large scale, like large-scale studies like the GPLMS, and also Fundawande work because there's funding. But many other projects that struggle to do this kind of research work are seen as doing work, but their work is not really valued. And it is qualitative work that they are doing. It's not only just work that has to do with how many children have passed a test, but it is holistic in the fact that it is supporting the children, vulnerable children, it is keeping them safe. It's everything that is happening in these after-school programs that give much more than just literacy. And I think they need to be valued. And like Eupoti there at the back said, they are close to communities, they can influence communities, but because of funding, they are not seen. So there's a lot of unseen workers if people are not doing work. There are people, women doing libraries here and who are not here, some of them. They are working with school libraries and bringing books to libraries and building literacy practices in libraries. But there's also the writing of academics that says books are harmful to children. And then you're like, what is this? You know, that also undermines the work that is being done. To say that books are harmful, you can only read books that are at the level of a child is not true, because we know with babies, you can read a book that is beyond the child's understanding when they are babies. So why can't you read a novella that a child can understand when you read aloud, even though they are struggling to read it by themselves, and then still have their graded books that they can read by themselves? It's not an either or. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thanks.
I hope I'm going to answer one of the questions that were online, if I heard it correctly, about the teacher training, about something about, can you just...
Let me find it for you.
It was quite a long one.
Was that the first one I read
Yes.
out? Basically, it's what does corrective action look like regarding capacitating teachers with reading methodologies and enabling parents to be part of the combined solution, that serious play, the educational play, and the continuity from school to home.
Okay, I'm going to start with the first part. I think with that word corrective, I think we've been speaking about it this evening, around that when Natalie mentioned, you know, we come from that legacy. What we've learned is what we give to the children. That's how we teach. And so to change, I want to go back, a teacher behavioral change is a big thing. It's like, if we don't change the behavior of our teachers, because that includes how they think, how they process information, and how they give it back to the children, then we can try all the things like we spoke right at the beginning, the band-aids and stuff. But it is getting done. Now that takes time, because you need to be almost one-on-one with the teacher, and we don't have that capacity. If you just think of the Western Cape, I may have one or two out, there's about 60-odd subject advisors, and they have to service how many schools? Hundreds of schools. And so you go into a classroom, you just watch a lesson, you say, quick, this is what you must do, maybe try this and that, and there you go. And so for me, to get down to the teacher level, it's basic things. It's working with the HOD is at the school, the departmental head is at the school. If we can capacitate the departmental head to be able to be a good coach, to be able to sit with the teacher and coach that teacher to move their thinking and their teaching practice, that would work. If we were to be able to capacitate teachers to run their own PLCs, that's the idea, for them to share good practices among themselves, because we don't have the capacity to bring people in. Those are like everyday things that we can do. But the biggest thing is if we don't change this up here. I just want to give one example. I worked in a school where I was a reading coach for as in a project, and I went to the one teacher's class, and she opened the door, and she was a teacher that had been in the system for a long time. She opened the door and she said, "Oh, I heard you were coming, and I know my principal has probably signed that we are on this coach, so you can come in, but I'm not going to do anything special for you." And I walked in and I sat down and I watched, and she didn't do anything special. In fact, she didn't do anything much, and then, you know, it's like speaking to her afterwards, like, what worked well, what didn't work well. And she just said to me, "Look, yeah, I got 2 more years in the system and I'm out of here. Don't expect me to change." And yet in the same school, a teacher with the same number of years of experience also said, "This is difficult for me. I've never had somebody come and coach me and give me like pointers and asked me how did I feel, how did I reflect on my lesson, asked me what worked well, what." It's hard for me, but you know, that person now is a subject advisor. So I'm not saying that is the ultimate goal to move up, but I'm just saying that person moved her thinking so that she could move her practice, so she could move her children. And unfortunately, she moved out. You know, that's what happens. People recognize you and you move out. But I think we need to, those corrective measures can be put in place. It's not rocket science.
Yeah, maybe I
Thanks.
can add to that. I have been also in classrooms, and then I would see teachers and I would notice that what they are doing is sometimes I would actually feel like getting up and teaching the lesson for them, showing them how to do it. Then you would see lists of words, and then you ask the child, "Can you read?" Okay, the child can read the word, but he just has absolutely no idea, no clue what the meaning of the word is. And it's just lists of words, and they need to learn the words, and they need to spell it, and that is it. And I also trained teachers at CTLI. And then you go back and you see, you wonder now, why did you train? Because nothing has happened. They go back and then they still do the same. And sometimes they say that, well, CAPS is too voluminous, and there is so much to do. I cannot really cover everything. And it is, as somebody said, it's just ticking off. If I just tick, so that I've done this. To them, it is the work is more important than the learner. They don't think that if after every day a child should have learned something, must take something out. Another thing is if they teach in the school, it is for assessment, and the learners are also thinking it is for assessment. I must just pass this test here. They don't know that we teach them so that they can apply it outside, in life outside. For instance, if you, coming back to the lesson, if you, for instance, ask a child now, when you drive along the road, see if you can see any of the words that you can identify. Or if you go shopping with mummy, look at the labels, look at on the peas and the fish and the cornflakes, and bring it to school, paste it in a book, and write your own story. So in that way, the child will then learn that reading is not only for the classroom, reading is outside, for the outside world, for advanced learning. And that is something that even for mathematics also, that teachers don't seem to realize they should prepare the child for the work outside, because maybe it is that they are so overwhelmed. When I worked at the department, I used to say the teachers are overworked and the learners are overwhelmed with all the knowledge that they have to digest.
The system is brutal.
Yeah, the system.
I think
yeah.
I'm being flagged down
Yes.
by the media team. I will just firstly maybe before I call Sean Filiun, who is the head of the School of Education at Cornerstone Institute, I just want to, on behalf of Cornerstone and Oxford University Press, thank you for spending the evening with us. I know you guys have busy schedules. I feel this conversation is many conversations. Just the teacher support aspect on itself is something that needs engaging. And like I said, we have a school of education. We need to engage you. We need to engage you. You're starting school, so we need to talk to you definitely. So I just want to say thank you. We've got a little something from the two institutions just to say thank you. I'm going to, can you, just, sorry, just a thank you from us.